The Velthari Dominion had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 3 galactic arms, covering more than 200,000 star systems. They had conquered 347 different species, and not one had ever successfully fought back. The Velthari were tall, thin creatures with gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed pale blue. They believed themselves to be the greatest beings in the universe, and for 10,000 years, nothing had proven them wrong. High Sovereign Kethverus sat on his throne made of black metal and the bones of fallen enemies. He had ruled the Dominion for 200 years, and in that time, he had added 47 new species to his collection of slaves. His palace floated in orbit above the Dominion homeworld, a massive structure that could be seen from the planet's surface like a second moon. From here, he controlled an empire that most species could not even imagine. On this particular day, his intelligence minister approached the throne with news. The minister was a small, nervous Velthari named Suthkal, who always walked with his head bowed low. "Great Sovereign," Suthkal said, his voice shaking slightly, "our scouts have discovered a new species in the outer regions of the galaxy. They call themselves humans." Kethverus leaned forward with mild interest. New species meant new slaves, new resources, new worlds to add to his empire. "Tell me about them." Suthkal activated a holographic display that showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. "They live on this world, which they call Earth. They've only recently developed space travel. Their fastest ships can barely reach the nearest stars. They have primitive weapons, chemical explosives, and basic nuclear devices. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest patrol ships." The High Sovereign studied the images of humans. They were soft creatures, with only 2 eyes and skin in various shades of brown and pink. They wore fabric coverings over their bodies and lived in structures made of stone and metal. They looked weak. "How many of them are there?" Kethverus asked. "Approximately 12 billion on their home planet, with small colonies on their moon and a neighboring red planet. Their total population is insignificant compared to our empire." Kethverus noticed something in the images. The humans appeared to be fighting each other. Their planet showed signs of wars, with damaged cities and military forces facing off against one another. He laughed, a cold sound that echoed through his throne room. "They fight among themselves," he said. "They are divided and weak. This will be the easiest conquest in a century." Suthkal nodded eagerly. "Yes, Great Sovereign. Our analysts predict complete subjugation within 1 solar cycle. Shall the First order a full invasion fleet?" Kethverus waved his hand dismissively. "No, do not waste resources on such primitive creatures. Send a single subjugation fleet. 200 ships should be more than enough. Let Commander Yorith handle it. He has been bored lately and could use the entertainment." The order was given, and within days, the subjugation fleet departed for the small blue planet called Earth. Commander Yorith was a veteran of 60 conquests. He had personally overseen the destruction of 12 civilizations and the enslavement of billions. He was old for a Velthari, with deep lines on his gray face and eyes that had seen countless worlds burn. He took no pleasure in his work anymore. It had become routine. As his fleet traveled through the darkness between stars, Yorith reviewed the intelligence on humanity. He watched recordings of human wars, their primitive tanks and aircraft fighting over patches of dirt. He saw their nuclear weapons, which his shields could absorb without effort. He observed their space stations, which looked like children's toys compared to his smallest warship. "Pathetic," he muttered to himself. "This is beneath me." His second-in-command, a young officer named Threll, stood nearby. "Commander, should we prepare the ground forces for occupation?" Yorith shook his head. "There will be no need. We will burn a few of their cities, and they will surrender. They always do. Every species surrenders when they see our power." prepared the standard ultimatum broadcast. The fleet arrived in the human solar system after 3 weeks of travel. Yorith ordered his ships to take position above Earth, spreading out to block the sun from the planet below. He wanted the humans to look up and see darkness. He wanted them to understand their helplessness before he even spoke a word. The broadcast went out on all frequencies. Yorith's face appeared on every screen, every device, every communication system on Earth. "People of Earth," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. "I am Commander Yorith of the Velthari Dominion. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender unconditionally. You will hand over all weapons, all resources, all technology. Your people will serve the Dominion. Resistance is not possible. You have seen our fleet. You know you cannot fight us. Surrender now, and most of you will be allowed to live. Resist, and your world will burn. You have 1 hour to respond." Yorith ended the transmission and waited. He had given this speech hundreds of times. Usually, the response came within minutes, terrified leaders begging for mercy, promising to cooperate, asking only that their people be spared. The hour was a formality. No species had ever used a full time, but the humans did not respond in minutes. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Yorith felt something he had not felt in decades: curiosity. Perhaps their communication systems are too primitive to send a reply, Thrall suggested. Yorith shook his head. No, they received the message. I can see their military forces moving on the planet's surface. They are doing something. Finally, with only minutes remaining in the hour, a response came. It was not from a frightened leader. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a woman's voice, speaking calmly and clearly. "Commander Yorith of the Velthari Dominion. This is Admiral Chun Wei of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum. Here is our response. You have 12 hours to remove your fleet from our solar system. If you do not leave, we will remove you ourselves. This is your only warning." Silence filled the bridge of Yorith's flagship. His officers looked at each other in confusion. Thrall actually laughed out loud. "Did they just threaten us?" Thrall said. "A primitive species with chemical rockets just threatened the Velthari Dominion." Yorith did not laugh. He stared at the communication console with his 4 eyes narrowed. In 60 conquests, he had never received a counter-ultimatum. Species begged. Species surrendered. Species ran. They did not issue warnings. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Commander, should we respond?" Thrall asked. Yorith leaned back in his command chair. "No. Let them have their 12 hours. Let them prepare whatever pathetic defense they think they can mount. It will make the conquest slightly more entertaining." The 12 hours passed slowly. Yorith watched the planet below, waiting for some sign of human resistance. He saw their primitive ships moving around their moon. He saw activity on their red planet colony, but nothing that looked like a serious military response. No weapons platforms. No defense satellites. Nothing. When the 12 hours ended, Yorith gave the order. Begin bombardment. Target their largest cities. Show them what happens when insects challenge gods. The first plasma barrage fell toward Earth, and Commander Yorith smiled for the first time in years. He did not know that this smile would be his last. He did not know that everything he believed about humans was wrong. He did not know that in 14 minutes, his entire understanding of the universe would be destroyed. The blue planet waited below, and humanity was ready. The first plasma blast hit the Pacific Ocean, and the world changed forever. 3 million tons of seawater turned to steam in an instant. A wall of boiling water rushed toward the coastlines of Japan, China, and the Western Americas. Millions of people watched from their windows as the sky turned orange and the horizon disappeared behind a curtain of destruction. In Tokyo, a mother held her children close and prayed. In Los Angeles, an old man sat on his porch and watched the distant glow, wondering if this was how humanity would end. In Beijing, soldiers stood at their posts, knowing their weapons were useless against the enemy above, but deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a bunker carved into solid rock 3 kilometers underground, Admiral Chen Wei watched the attack with calm eyes. She stood in the center of a massive command room, filled with holographic displays and hundreds of officers working at their stations. The walls showed real-time images of the Valkyrie fleet, each ship tracked and analyzed. "First strike confirmed," reported a young officer. "Pacific impact. Casualties estimated at 12,000 from the initial tsunami. Coastal cities are evacuating." Admiral Chun nodded slowly. "They have committed. They fired first. That is all we needed." Around her stood the most powerful military leaders on Earth. General Morrison of the American forces, Marshal Petrov of the Russian Federation, General Liu of the Chinese armies, Admiral Nakamura of the Japanese fleet. They had been rivals once, their nations pointing weapons at each other. Now they stood together, united by a secret that had been kept for 60 years. General Morrison stepped forward. He was an old man with white hair and a face marked by decades of stress. "Admiral, the world is watching. They think we are helpless. They think this is the end. Let them think that," Chun replied. "Let the Valkyrie think that too. It makes what comes next more effective." She turned to face a large display showing the entire solar system. Little dots of light marked every asteroid, every moon, every empty region of space. But Chun knew that those empty regions were not empty at all. 60 years ago, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room, our grandparents detected the first Valkyrie signals. They watched as the Dominion conquered world after world. They studied the aliens' tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. And they made a choice. She pressed a button, and the display changed. The empty regions of space were suddenly filled with thousands of markers, hidden stations, secret shipyards, concealed weapon platforms. They chose to hide, to pretend humanity was primitive and divided, to let our wars and conflicts be seen by anyone watching from the stars. And while the galaxy thought we were fighting each other over oil and land, we were building something else entirely. Marshal Petrov spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. 3 generations of soldiers kept this secret. 3 generations of scientists worked in hidden laboratories. 3 generations of workers built ships they would never see fly. All for this moment. Admiral Chun nodded. The Valkyries see what we want them to see. They see primitive rockets and nuclear weapons. They do not see the quantum drives we developed 20 years ago. They do not see the dimensional weapons we tested in deep space. They do not see the fleet we have hidden throughout this solar system. She turned to face the assembled leaders. "Are all forces ready?" "Earth defense batteries are charged and standing by," reported General Liu. "Hidden beneath every major mountain range on the planet." "Luna fleet is prepared," added Admiral Nakamura. 47 ships concealed in craters on the dark side of the moon. "Belt forces are active," said another officer. 300 ships launching from asteroid bases throughout the belt. "Titan station reports ready," came a voice through the communication system. 200 ships and the main weapon platform are online. Admiral Chun took a deep breath. For her entire life, she had trained for this moment. Her mother had worked in the secret shipyards on Europa. Her father had died testing one of the first quantum drives. She carried their sacrifice and the sacrifice of millions of others on her shoulders. "The Valkyrie believe they are about to conquer a primitive species," she said. "They believe this will be easy. Let us teach them how wrong they are." She activated a single command on her console. A simple word appeared on the screen. Prometheus. All forces, she announced, her voice now broadcast to every hidden ship, every concealed station, every waiting soldier. Protocol Prometheus is active. May God have mercy on our enemies, because we will not. Across the solar system, 60 years of preparation came to life. In the asteroid belt. Massive doors opened in rocks that had seemed like ordinary space debris. Ships flew out, sleek, black vessels covered in angles that seemed impossible, made of materials that did not exist in any public record. Their engines burned with blue fire that produced no heat signature, no radiation, nothing that Valkyrie sensors could detect. On Europa, the ice cracked and split as platforms rose from the hidden ocean beneath. Each platform carried weapons that bent the laws of physics, weapons that had been tested only once. In the empty space between galaxies, where no one would see, beneath the surface of Mars, tunnels that colonists had never known existed opened up to release ships that had waited in darkness for decades. Their pilots were the best humanity had ever produced, trained since childhood for a battle that might never come. And on Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, a structure that looked like an ordinary mining station revealed its true purpose. Its surface split apart to show something massive beneath a weapon platform the size of a small city, powered by an energy source that humanity had discovered but never revealed. Commander Yorith was the first Valkyrie to notice something wrong. His sensors began screaming warnings, energy signatures appearing throughout the solar system, each one larger than anything his intelligence reports had predicted. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Where are these readings coming from?" His sensor officer stared at the display in disbelief. "Commander, I am detecting ships. Thousands of ships. They are coming from the asteroid belt, from the moons, from everywhere. The energy signatures are... This cannot be right. Show me." The main display changed, and Yorith felt his four eyes go wide. Ships were emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. Not primitive chemical rockets. Not the pathetic vessels his scouts had reported. These were warships, sleek and deadly, moving with speed and precision that exceeded anything in his fleet. "How many?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I count 3,700 ships, Commander. And they are still launching." Thrall stepped back from his console, his gray face turning pale. "That is impossible. Where were they hiding? How did we not detect them?" Yorith did not answer. He was staring at the approaching fleet, and for the first time in his long career, he felt something cold spreading through his chest. He had made a terrible mistake. The Dominion had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been primitive. The humans had not been divided. The humans had been waiting. Admiral Chun watched the Valkyrie fleet on her display. 200 ships hung above Earth, still confident in their power. They did not yet understand what was coming for them. "All ships," she commanded, "begin engagement. No mercy, no hesitation. Show them what humanity can do." The first human ships reached the Valkyrie fleet, and the sky above Earth lit up with fire. Not the orange fire of plasma weapons. Something different. Something new. A white light that seemed to cut through space itself, reaching across thousands of kilometers in an instant. Commander Yorith watched his forward destroyers disappear. Not explode. Not break apart. Simply disappear, as if they had never existed. The weapons the humans were using did not destroy ships. They erased them from reality. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships return fire!" The Valkyrie weapons activated, sending streams of plasma toward the human fleet. But the human ships danced through space like nothing Yorith had ever seen. They moved in ways that should have been impossible, changing direction instantly, accelerating faster than any crew should survive. His weapons hit nothing but empty space, and then the humans fired again. The battle for Earth had begun, and it would last exactly 14 minutes. Commander Yorith had seen many battles in his long life. He had watched worlds burn. He had ordered the deaths of billions. He had never known fear in combat, because he had never faced an enemy that could truly threaten him. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, he learned what fear felt like. The first minute changed everything. His forward destroyers, 20 ships that each carried enough firepower to level a continent, simply stopped existing. The human weapons did not create explosions. They created nothing. One moment a ship was there, the next moment it was gone. Empty space where metal and crew had been. What kind of weapons are these? Thrall screamed, his voice breaking with panic. Our shields are not even registering impact. Yorith gripped the arms of his command chair until his gray fingers turned white. Focus fire on the nearest human vessels. Overwhelm them with numbers. 50 Veltari ships turned their weapons toward a group of 10 human craft. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked through space, enough firepower to melt a small moon. Yorith watched, waiting to see the human ships die. They did not die. The human ships moved through the barrage, like water flowing around stones. They twisted and turned in patterns that made no sense, patterns that should have torn their crews apart from the force. Not a single shot touched them. And then they fired back. In the third minute, Yorith lost 40 more ships. The human weapons cut through his fleet like a blade through soft flesh. His shields, which had stopped everything from nuclear missiles to asteroid impacts, offered no protection. The white light simply passed through them, and whatever it touched ceased to be. "Commander!" His communication officer shouted. "Ships from the asteroid belt have arrived. 300 more human vessels on approach." Yorith looked at his tactical display and felt his stomach drop. The humans were not just defending. They were surrounding him. Ships came from every direction from the belt, from the moons of the giant planets, from hidden positions throughout the solar system. His 200 ships were being swallowed by a force that numbered in the thousands. "Send a message to the Dominion," Yorith ordered, his voice now steady with grim acceptance. "Tell High Sovereign Kethferus what is happening here. Tell him the humans are not what we thought. Tell him." A white flash lit up the view screen, and the flagship shook violently. Yorith was thrown from his chair, crashing against the deck. When he looked up, half his bridge crew was gone. Not dead, gone. The section of the bridge where they had stood was simply empty. The deck ending in a smooth edge where the weapon had cut through. "Hull breach on deck 7 through 15, reported a surviving officer, her voice trembling. "Medical bay is gone. Engine room 2 is gone. We have lost 40% of the ship." Thrall crawled across the tilting deck toward Yorith. Blood from a cut on his head covered half his face. "Commander, we cannot win this. We need to retreat." Yorith pulled himself back into his chair. Outside the view screen, he could see his fleet dying. Ships exploded, broke apart, or simply vanished as human weapons tore through them. The Veltari were firing constantly, but they were hitting nothing. The human ships were everywhere and nowhere, moving too fast to track. "Navigation," Yorith commanded. "Plot a course back to Dominion space. All ships, prepare for emergency jump." But before his navigation officer could respond, a new voice came through the communication system. It was the same calm voice from before the human admiral. "Commander Yorith, this is Admiral Chun. Your jump drives have been disabled. We targeted them specifically. You are not going anywhere." Yorith stared at the console in disbelief. "How?" he whispered. "How did you know where our jump drives were located?" "We have been watching your empire for 60 years, Commander. We know everything about your ships. We know their weak points, their blind spots, their limitations. We have had 6 decades to prepare for this moment. Did you really think we would not be ready? In the 8th minute, something new appeared on the tactical display. A massive energy signature, coming from the outer solar system. Yorth's remaining sensors struggled to make sense of what they were detecting. The power readings were off the scale more energy than his entire fleet could produce in a year. What is that? Thrall asked, staring at the display with wide eyes. The answer came seconds later. A beam of pure white light, kilometers wide, streaked across the solar system. It moved at the speed of light itself, crossing billions of kilometers in moments. It struck the center of the Velthari fleet, and 30 ships disappeared at once. Yorth understood then. The humans had not just built ships. They had built a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets in a single shot. A weapon hidden in the distant reaches of their solar system, where no scout would ever think to look. All ships, he broadcast to what remained of his fleet. Surrender. Lower your weapons and surrender. The order spread through the surviving Velthari vessels. One by one, they stopped firing. Their weapons powered down. Their engines went quiet. Surrender was something the Velthari had received many times, but never given. Until now, in the 11th minute, human ships began approaching the disabled Velthari vessels. They did not fire. Instead, they attached themselves to the alien hulls, cutting through doors, flooding the ships with soldiers in armored suits that moved with mechanical precision. Yorth watched through the view screen as human soldiers boarded his flagship. They moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, securing each section, taking prisoners. He had expected savages. What he saw were professionals, calm, organized, deadly. The door to his bridge opened, and human soldiers entered. They wore black armor that covered them completely, with helmets that hid their faces. Their weapons were pointed at him, strange devices that hummed with barely contained energy. "Commander Yorth," one of them said. The voice filtered through the helmet speakers. "You are now a prisoner of the United Earth Defense Force. Your war against humanity is over." Yorth stood slowly, raising his hands in surrender. "You have won this battle," he said. "But the Dominion has thousands of fleets, millions of ships. They will come for revenge." The human soldier stepped closer. The helmet's faceplate cleared, revealing a young woman with brown skin and dark eyes. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "We are counting on it," she said. In the 14th minute, the battle ended. 200 Velthari warships drifted dead in space, captured and disabled. 47,000 alien crew members were prisoners. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Admiral Chun stood in her command center, surrounded by cheering officers. The displays showed the aftermath human ships patrolling among the captured Velthari fleet. Medical teams boarding to treat wounded prisoners. Engineers already studying the alien technology. Casualties? She asked. 700 dead from the initial bombardment, an officer reported. Coastal areas hit by the tsunami. Rescue operations are underway. No military losses. Chun nodded slowly. 700 lives. 700 people who had died because the Velthari had thought humans were easy prey. She would remember every one of them. "What about their distress signal?" she asked. "Did they manage to send one?" "Yes, Admiral. Commander Yorth transmitted to the Dominion homeworld before we disabled his communications. They know what happened here." Chun looked at the display showing the distant stars, somewhere out there where the Velthari Empire waited. They had expected a quick conquest. They had received a devastating defeat. They would want revenge. "Good," she said quietly. "Let them come. Let them send their millions of ships. We will be ready." She turned to face her officers, her expression serious but proud. "Today, we have shown the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered. Today, we have shown that 60 years of sacrifice and secrecy were worth it. Today, We have won the first battle of what will be a long war." She paused, letting her words sink in. But this is only the beginning. The Dominion will not accept this defeat. They will come back with everything they have. And when they do, we will be waiting. Just like we waited today. The command center erupted in cheers again, but Chun did not join in. She was already thinking about what came next. The universe had changed forever in 14 minutes. Humanity had announced itself to the stars with fire and fury. There was no going back now that the age of hiding was over. The age of humanity had begun. High Sovereign Kethris sat alone in his private chambers, watching the recorded footage for the 37th time. His 4 eyes were fixed on the holographic display, watching his ships die again and again. The recording had arrived 3 days ago, transmitted across the vast distance between the human system and the Dominion homeworld. 3 days, and he had done nothing but watch. The footage showed Commander Yorth's fleet, 200 of the finest warships in the Dominion, being dismantled in 14 minutes. Kethris watched the white light of human weapons cut through his destroyers. He watched his cruisers try to flee and fail. He watched Yorth, the veteran of 60 conquests, surrender on his knees with tears running down his gray face. There was no sound in the recording, just images. But the silence made it worse. Kethris could imagine the screams, the panic, the moment when 10,000 years of Veltari superiority crumbled to dust. A knock came at his door. He did not answer. The knock came again, more insistent. "Enter," he finally said, his voice hoarse from days without speaking. Intelligence Minister Suthkal shuffled into the room, his eyes fixed on the floor. The small Veltari looked even more nervous than usual. His hands clasped together so tightly that his gray knuckles had turned white. "Great Sovereign," Suthkal began. "The Council is asking, how did this happen?" Kethris interrupted. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which was far more frightening than if he had shouted. "You told me they were primitive. You told me they had chemical rockets and nuclear toys. You told me this would be easy." Suthkal began to tremble. "Sovereign, our scouts. Your scouts saw what the humans wanted them to see." Kethris stood slowly, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. "For 60 years, they watched us. For 60 years, they let us believe they were fighting over dirt and oil. For 60 years, they built a fleet that could destroy our ships like they were made of paper. And your scouts noticed nothing." The intelligence minister fell to his knees. "I will accept any punishment, Great Sovereign. My failure is complete." Kethris walked past him toward the window. His palace floated above the Dominion homeworld, and from here he could see the great cities that covered the planet's surface. Billions of Veltari lived down there, going about their lives, confident in the protection of their empire. They did not know yet. They did not know that something had changed in the universe. Punishment would serve no purpose, Kethris said. We were all fooled. The humans played a game that lasted 6 decades, and we never suspected. That is not simple intelligence failure. That is something else entirely. He turned to face Suthkal. What do we know about these weapons they used? The minister rose shakily to his feet. We have analyzed the footage extensively, Great Sovereign. Their weapons appear to operate on principles we do not understand. They bypass our shields completely. Our physicists believe they may be affecting space itself, but they cannot explain how. And their ships? Faster than anything we have. More maneuverable than anything we have. Their crews should have died from the acceleration forces they displayed, but they did not. Either they have found a way to cancel inertia, or their crews are not biological. Kethris absorbed this information slowly. For 10,000 years, the Veltari had been the most advanced species in the known galaxy. They had conquered every civilization they encountered, because none could match their technology. Now, A species they had dismissed as primitive had weapons that their best scientists could not even understand. "What about their numbers?" he asked. "How many ships do they have?" Sufcal consulted a small device in his hand. Based on the footage, they deployed approximately 4,000 vessels in the battle. But Great Sovereign, we also detected construction activity throughout their system. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, beneath the ice of several moons, in orbit around their gas giants. Our analysts estimate they may have 10,000 ships or more. Perhaps many more. We simply do not know. Kethris closed his 4 eyes. 10,000 ships with weapons that could not be stopped. And his empire had just given them a reason to use those weapons. "The Council wishes to discuss retaliation," Sufcal continued carefully. "Admiral Vethkal has proposed sending the first Grand Fleet. 5,000 ships to do what?" Kethris opened his eyes and fixed the minister with a cold stare. "To die like Yorth's fleet? To give the humans more target practice? Great Sovereign, we cannot allow this attack to go unanswered. The other subjugated species are watching. If we show weakness... Kethris laughed bitterly. "Minister, we sent 200 ships to conquer a species we thought was primitive. They destroyed our fleet in 14 minutes without losing a single vessel. Every species in the galaxy already knows we are weak. Sending another fleet to die will not change that." He moved to his communication console and activated a channel to his senior admirals. One by one, their faces appeared on holographic displays around the room. The most powerful military commanders in the Dominion. Rulers of fleets that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "You have all seen the footage," Kethris said. "You all know what happened at the human world. I want your honest assessment. If we send the first Grand Fleet, what will happen?" Silence filled the room. The admirals looked at each other, none wanting to speak first. Finally, Admiral Vethkal, the oldest and most experienced of them, cleared his throat. "Great Sovereign, I believe we would lose. Our weapons cannot hit their ships. Our shields cannot stop their weapons. Our numbers would mean nothing. They would destroy us, just as they destroyed Yorth. And if we send 2 Grand Fleets? 3? Another admiral spoke up, a younger Velthri named Kreshtal. "Based on the footage analysis, Great Sovereign, they were not fighting at full capacity. Their weapon platform in the outer system fired only once. If we sent multiple fleets, they would simply fire it more times. We could lose 100,000 ships and achieve nothing." Kethris nodded slowly. This was what he had feared. His admirals, who had never known defeat, who had laughed at every enemy they faced, were afraid. And they were right to be. "There is something else that concerns me," he said. "Something beyond their weapons and ships." He activated a new display, showing the timeline of the human war. From the first contact 60 years ago to the battle 3 days past. They knew we were watching them. They knew our scouts were observing their planet. And for 60 years, they showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. They faked primitive technology. They faked internal conflicts. They made themselves look like easy prey. He let that sink in before continuing. What kind of species thinks that far ahead? What kind of species can maintain a deception for 6 decades, across multiple generations, with perfect discipline? We pride ourselves on our long-term planning. We think in centuries. But the humans have shown they can think just as far ahead as we can. Perhaps further. Admiral Kreshtal spoke nervously. "Great Sovereign, are you suggesting we cannot defeat them?" "I am suggesting that we do not understand what we are dealing with. The humans did not just build weapons. They built a trap. They waited patiently for us to step into it. They let us fire first so they could claim self-defense. Everything about this was calculated." Kethris turned to face his admirals directly. For 10,000 years, the Velthari have been the predators of this galaxy. Every species we encountered was prey. But the humans are not prey. They are something else. They are predators who pretended to be prey. And now they have revealed their true nature. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembled commanders. The question is not whether we can destroy them. The question is what they will do next. They have shown the galaxy that we can be defeated. Every species we have conquered is now wondering if they should have fought harder. If they should fight now. The humans have not just beaten one fleet. They have cracked the foundation of our entire empire. Intelligence Minister Suthkal cleared his throat nervously. Great Sovereign, we have received communications from the human admiral. She's requesting diplomatic negotiations. Kethris felt something twist in his chest. Diplomatic negotiations. The Velthari did not negotiate. They conquered. They demanded. They took. But now, for the first time in 10,000 years, they had no choice. Arrange the negotiations, he said quietly, and pray to whatever gods still listen that the humans want peace. Because if they want war, there is nothing we can do to stop them. The admiral stared at their sovereign in shock, but none of them disagreed. The footage played in their minds, an endless loop of destruction. The Velthari Empire had finally met something it could not conquer, and it was terrifying. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Seoul, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Chunwei stood before the United Earth Council in the Great Assembly Hall beneath the mountains of Switzerland. The room was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth, every colony in the solar system. Flags hung from the walls, but above them all flew a new banner, the flag of United Earth, adopted in the weeks after the battle. The Velthari have withdrawn completely from this galactic arm, Chun reported, her voice carrying across the silent hall. They have established a buffer zone of 200 light-years around our system. Their emperor has signed a formal treaty recognizing Earth as a sovereign power. They will not return. Applause filled the room, but Chun raised her hand for silence. However, this is only the beginning. The Velthari ruled over 347 species. Many of those species have now seen that the Dominion can be defeated. In the past 6 months, we have received communications from over 50 different worlds. They want to know if the stories are true. They want to know if we can help them. The display behind her changed to show a map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems blinked with different colors: red for Dominion territory, blue for Earth's sphere, and now scattered throughout. Points of green. These green markers represent species that have reached out to us. Some are still under Dominion control and are asking for liberation. Some have already begun fighting for their freedom. Some simply want to establish diplomatic relations with a species that prove the Dominion is not invincible. Council President Martinez, a weathered woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. Admiral, what is our current military strength? Can we help these species? Chun nodded. Our fleet now numbers 12,000 vessels, with more being constructed every month. The shipyards that were hidden for 60 years are now operating openly. We have also begun training new crews from the younger generation. Within 5 years, we expect to have a fleet of 50,000 ships. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. 50,000 ships. Just months ago, that number would have seemed impossible. Now, it was just the beginning. But military strength alone is not enough, Chung continued. We have spent 60 years hiding, preparing, building weapons. Now we must learn to do something we have never done before. We must learn to lead. She gestured to a section of the hall where strange figures sat apart from the human delegates. They were representatives from 3 of the species that had already established contact with Earth. Their bodies were different shapes, different colors, breathing different atmospheres through special masks. But they all watched Admiral Chun with the same expression in their alien eyes. Hope. These are ambassadors from the Cathari, the Vorn, and the Silithine peoples. All three were conquered by the Velthari centuries ago. All three lost their freedom, their culture, their futures. They have traveled across the galaxy to meet us, to see for themselves the species that made the Dominion tremble. One of the aliens stood slowly. It was a Cathari, a being that looked something like a large praying mantis, with green crystalline skin and compound eyes that reflected the light like jewels. When it spoke, its voice was translated through a device around its neck. For 800 years, my people have lived as slaves. We built ships for the Dominion. We mined resources for the Dominion. We watched our children taken to serve the Dominion. We had accepted that this was our fate, that nothing would ever change. The Cathari turned to face the human assembly, spreading its forearms wide. And then we heard about you. We heard about a small blue planet that had defeated 200 Dominion warships in 14 minutes. We heard about a species that had hidden its true strength, that had waited and planned and prepared. We heard about humans. The alien's voice grew stronger, filled with emotion that transcended species. You have given us something we had forgotten existed. You have given us hope. The Dominion told us resistance was impossible. You proved them wrong. And now, for the first time in centuries, my people are beginning to remember what freedom feels like. The assembly hall fell silent. Chun watched as delegates wiped tears from their eyes, as hardened military officers struggled to maintain composure. She had spent her entire life preparing for war. She had never expected this. The weight of being assembled to billions of beings across the galaxy. President Martinez rose from her seat. Admiral Chun, Ambassador Cathari, representatives of all species present. I believe I speak for all of humanity when I say this. We did not seek this role. We prepared for war because we had no choice. We hid because survival demanded it. But now, the galaxy has changed. And we must change with it. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of humans and aliens alike. For thousands of years, humans fought each other. We have a history of violence, of cruelty, of conflict. We are not perfect. But we also have a history of standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves. We have fought against tyranny on our own world. Now, it seems, we must fight against tyranny across the stars. The President turned to Admiral Chun. What do you recommend? Chun had prepared for this question. She'd spent weeks discussing it with her advisors, with scientists, with philosophers. The answer was not simple. We have two choices, she said. We can use our power to conquer, as the Velthari did. We can become the new empire, ruling through fear instead of being ruled by it. That path would be easy. It would be safe. And it would make us no better than those we defeated. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Or we can do something harder. We can offer our protection without demanding submission. We can share our technology with those who will use it responsibly. We can build alliances based on respect, not domination. We can show the galaxy that strength does not require cruelty. The Vorn ambassador, a being that resembled a large otter covered in silver fur, rose to speak. And if the Velthari return? If they decide peace is no longer acceptable? Chun smiled, and there was steel in her expression. Then we will remind them why they signed the treaty in the first place. We did not build this fleet to conquer. We built it to protect. And we will protect anyone who asks for our help. The Velthari learned in 14 minutes what happens when they threaten Earth. If they threaten our allies, they will learn the same lesson again. The vote was held that day. The decision was unanimous. The United Earth Defense Force would become the United Earth Alliance Fleet. Its mission would not be conquest, but protection. Any species that wished to join the alliance would be welcomed. Any species that threatened Alliance members would face the full power of humanity's weapons. In the months that followed, the Alliance grew. One by one, species that had lived under Dominion rule for centuries reached out to Earth. Some sent ambassadors. Some sent refugees. Some sent soldiers eager to learn how to fight. The green markers on the galactic map spread like stars appearing at dusk, each one representing a new ally, a new friend, a new member of the growing family. Admiral Chun stood on the observation deck of her new flagship, the UES Prometheus. The ship was the largest vessel ever built by human hands, 3 kilometers long, carrying weapons that could crack a planet. But as Chun looked out at the stars, she thought not of destruction, but of possibility. A young officer approached her, a lieutenant barely out of training. "Admiral, we have received another communication. The Valkyrie Emperor wishes to speak with you directly." Chun turned, her expression curious. "What does he want?" He says he wants to understand. He wants to know why humanity chose to help other species instead of conquering them. He says in 10,000 years, the Dominion never considered any other way. Chun smiled sadly. It was perhaps the most important question in the universe, and it had come from their former enemy. "Tell the Emperor I will speak with him. Tell him that humanity learned something a long time ago, something we almost forgot in our wars and conflicts. Tell him that true strength is not measured by how many you can destroy. It is measured by how many you can protect." She turned back to the stars, to the vast darkness between worlds, to the countless species waiting to see what humanity would do next. "We spent 60 years hiding because we were afraid. Now we spend our time reaching out because we have hope. That is what changed. That is why we are different." The lieutenant nodded and hurried away to deliver the message. Chun remained at the window, watching the ships of the Alliance fleet move through space around her. Human ships flew alongside Cathari vessels, Vorn cruisers, Silithine scouts. Different species, different shapes, different ways of thinking, but all united under a single purpose. The Valkyrie had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. They had built an empire on conquest and domination, and they had never imagined any other way. But humanity had shown them something new. Humanity had shown them that there was another path. It would take time. It would take patience. It would take generations of work to undo the damage the Dominion had done. But for the first time in the history of this galaxy, species were working together by choice, not by force. And it had all started with a single battle. 14 minutes that changed everything. Admiral Chun raised her hand in a quiet salute to the stars.